the words don't ring true. There's something here that didn't used to be. If there's something wrong inside you, tell me now what you need, and together we can heal it. Count on me. Count on me. When I leave you, count on me. When I leave you, count on me. I'll always need you. Count on me. Count on me. Count on me. Count on me. I'll always need you. Count on me. Count on me. When others leave you, count on me. When they want to leave you, count on me. I'll always need you. Count on me. Count on me. For doing my share, you know that I care. Count on me. I'll always be there. Count on me. You can count on me.
I love the Statler Brothers. I don't know about you. I love that song, Count on Me. That's going to be our theme over the next couple of months. You can see the posters in the back as you go out today. You can't help but be confronted with the poster, Count on Me. We have one up in the fellowship hall. Count on me. You see these badges that many who are serving in various areas are wearing today, and we'll be wearing throughout these next several weeks on Count on Me. You know, we begin today, and throughout the service, we have taken time out to acknowledge, obviously, this is the 15th anniversary of 9/11. Most of us who are adults can remember exactly where we were, what we were doing, what we were thinking and feeling as the events began to unfold that day. What is interesting is the fact that that tragedy brought our nation to God like very few events in American history. It brought Congress to the steps of the White House in prayer. It brought prayer throughout our schools that had been outlawed. It opened up church doors throughout the week, and every night there were services, prayer services for our country. Church attendance immediately following 9/11 soared to an all-time high. But 15 years later, we reevaluate where we're at, and perhaps we have failed to follow through with our commitment to God. 2 Chronicles 7:14 that Ron just read, that was on the screen earlier, still stands, doesn't it? If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, will forgive their sin, and will heal their land. What an incredible God we have to give to us that invitation. But throughout, in honor of that, with the theme that we want to carry on based on 9/11, it's we have a God that we have been able to count on, but the challenge is, can he count on you and I? And so we want to deepen our level of commitment and faithfulness as we go through this time. I chose as a cover picture for the next several weeks that we begin with and that we close with of that of a firefighter coming out of a burning building carrying a child. You know, when I think, somebody mentions 9/11, one of the first scenes that always rushes through my mind, automatic, were the images of the firefighters that were rushing up into the Twin Towers, knowing well the risk they were taking, and literally it would cost many of them their lives. They wouldn't come out alive, as those buildings would come down upon them. But they were people that others could count on. They were a tremendous example, the firefighters were, of John 15:13, where Jesus says, greater love has no one than this, that one lay down his life for one's friends. Those firefighters laid their lives down for people they never knew. But the one who originally gave us those words, Jesus Christ, went out the very next day and laid down his life for his enemies. And when you look at the life of Jesus, we realize he's one we can count on. Today we begin a series of messages on the life of Joseph. Joseph in the Old Testament was a man of extreme faithfulness. And we're going to define faithfulness as simply, in modern day terms, count on me. A man or a woman who is faithful is somebody that says, you can count on me. A husband, a wife that is faithful is one in which their spouse can count on them to be there no matter what. Count on me. And that's what we're talking about today in the life of Joseph. He exemplified every reason. He could have had every excuse given in the book why no one should count on him. But he rose above it. He rose above it. When hated, he did not retaliate. When tempted, he did not yield. When life caved in, he did not. When he prospered, he didn't strut. When he faced death, he faced it with incredible confidence and hope. We're going to look today and see that as we begin these messages on Joseph, how that he was a man God could count on to do the right thing, even though he lived and found himself in less than a perfect family. And so if you're filling out the outline today, here we go with our first point. As we look to Joseph, the first thing we realize is it's a struggle. It's a struggle to be a count on me person when you grow up in a dysfunctional family. Man, that's tough. That's tough to do. Can you rise above your surroundings that you grew up in? And when we look at dysfunctional, we're going to find that if we define it, it's a family where there's a lot of hurt going on and very little help. It's a family where there's a lack of respect. It's a family that is not functioning the way God created it. That's why it's dysfunctional. It just doesn't have the harmony. It doesn't bring the security. It produces insecurity. And Joseph had all those things against him, but he could rise above it. How about you? What's your story? I love the story of the census taker that was traveling down a remote, isolated road in the mountains of West Virginia, and he came to a lonely cabin, and he got out, and he went, and he knocked on the door, and a little, thin, scrawny, early teenage girl answered the door, and he said, "Hello, honey." He said, is your father home? She goes, "Nope. Been in jail the last 2 years." "Oh," he says, "I'm sorry. Is mom home?" "Nope. She ran off with a moonshiner." Wow. He says, "Do you have an older sister?" "Yep. Can I talk with her?" "Nope, she ain't here. She's in a hospital for crazy people." "Oh, man," he says, "I only got one bullet left. Do you have an older brother?" "Yep." "May I talk with him?" "Nope, he ain't here. He's at Harvard." "Harvard?" He said, "What's he studying?" She says, "Nothing. They're studying him." So maybe that's how you feel. Maybe you feel like Man, how many of you feel like you live in crazy town, in a crazy family, and you say, man, God, this is incredible. Well, that was a crazy story, but it's mild compared to Joseph's story of his dysfunctional family he grew up with. We're going to look today, and we're going to see that Joseph's parents and grandparents, they worked hard. They worked overtime becoming dysfunctional. They did everything wrong. I mean, this story is so good. It puts all the dramas of Hollywood to shame. This is where truth or fact is stranger than fiction. You can't make this stuff up. But it's Joseph's really painful story. His father, Jacob, had a falling out with his brother Esau. And he ran. And he runs to a relative's house by the name of Laban. Now, Laban has a couple of daughters, Rachel and Leah. And here's what we read about them. Rachel was shapely and in every way a beauty. But Leah had lovely eyes. Whoa. Guys, if you ever went on a blind date, what's the first thing you asked whoever set you up? Is she pretty? And if they say, she has lovely eyes, you know it could be a rough evening. You know, you might be disappointed, you know. And that's just a tactful way of saying, Rachel, she's a knockout. Leah, she's nice. Wow. Well, the Bible says it's a no-brainer. Jacob fell in love with Rachel, and she did him. And it was one of the great love stories, so much so that he told her father Laban, he says, I'll work 7 years for you just to have her as my bride. Not now, but you give her my bride after 7 years. Man, how many of you dads would die for a guy to come and tell you that about your daughter? Say, I'll work 7 years, and then I'd like your daughter in marriage. Whoa, most marriages don't make it that far. And, but this is a love story. And the Bible says those 7 years seem like a few days because of his great love for Rachel. Oh, everybody says, oh. Now for the dysfunctional part, big time. It goes downhill like you can't believe. You have to understand there are some customs in that day that you just didn't break. And the first was the oldest daughter always got married first. Guess who was the oldest daughter? Leah. Yeah, lovely eyes, Leah. She was the oldest daughter. Also, keep in mind that the weddings there, they didn't have the lighting like today, didn't have electricity, obviously. But the bride wore a heavy veil, and she wore it all evening until they went to bed. So it's a perfect time for Joseph's grandfather, Laban, here to pull a fast one on Jacob. And we read this next. So Laban invited everyone in the neighborhood and prepared a wedding feast. But that night when it was dark, Laban took Leah to Jacob, and he slept with her. Laban had given Leah a servant Zilpah to be her maid, but when Jacob woke up in the morning, oh, it's Leah. Don't you wonder what Jacob is thinking when the sun comes up and he rolls over, he goes, hi, honey. He's thinking, Mom always told me women don't look as good in the morning, but this is ridiculous. This is just plumb ridiculous. I must have had too much drink last night. And finally he says, this isn't Rachel. This is Leah. Don't you wonder what happened to Rachel? What did they do? Did they tie her up and gag her and put her in the closet somewhere out in the barn? So I can't imagine her saying, oh, yeah, this is a great plan. Just go ahead with it. I think it was against her will, too. Well, this went over real well. Not, and understandably so. We got a real problem here. And Laban says, well, that's why I did it. She had to be married first. She's the oldest. But I tell you what, I'll give you Rachel after you fulfill your week with, lovely eyes Leah here. And he says, then I'll give you, Rachel. But you have to work another 7 years. Now, he didn't have to wait 14 years to have her as his wife. He got her after another week or so. But he did have to work another seven years. Man, this guy, the grandparent, is a real cheat. He's a deceiver. He's a con artist. It's unbelievable what he did to his own daughters, And so what happens then is we begin to see that they are fixed up, and now Jacob has 2 wives, and they are competing sisters. And God sees that poor Leah, she's not loved by Jacob. And guess what happens? She begins to produce kids that just don't stop. Let's read here. Genesis 29, 33 through 35. Then she, Leah, became pregnant a 3rd time, gave birth to another son. Once again, Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a 4th son, another son, 4th one. Man, you just read one phrase after another, and man, it just seems like, well, guess how many Rachel has? Zilch. Man, can you imagine the tension in that household? Genesis 30, verses 1 and 2. When Rachel saw that she wasn't having any children for Jacob, she became jealous of her sister. She pleaded with Jacob, give me children or I'll die. Then Jacob became furious with Rachel. Who do you think I am, God? Am I God? Can't you hear that barn burner going on as they're going back and forth? You better give me children. Well, I'm doing the best I can, but it's out of my hand. I'm not God. Take it up with him. Well, it's funny, you and Leah sure don't have any problems. She's already got 4. I don't have 1. Man. So it just goes from bad to worse. We read that later on here that she says, you know what? I got a plan. I will give, Rachel says, my servant girl, my handmaid, to Jacob as a wife, and I'll have children through my servant girl. Guess what? Leah, not to be outdone, does the same thing. Okay, what's our next verse we have up there that we have? All right, Joseph's mom died while he was still a young boy. So what we have is, up to this point, to catch up with the story, we have these gals competing. And we started out with 2 unhappy mamas in the household. Now, here's where we're at when we pick it up, where that Joseph comes on the scene. We have here, at this point, I want to get this right. Let me read this. All right. We have here 12 sons from 4 different moms living under the same roof. You can call that a blended family. I call it a picture of hell. Man, can you imagine what it's like? And then Joseph's mom, he's one of the last ones born, but after him there's Benjamin, and Rachel dies. And so we don't know how old he was, but now he's dealing with growing up most of his life without knowing his mother's love and security and her being there for him. So what a complex, crazy household this is. Now, brings us to the next point. Joseph had to also overcome jealous brothers. Man, is that an understatement? Had to overcome jealous brothers. The sibling rivalry from 4 different mamas in the household with all these kids running around, more than a dozen kids from 4 different moms. The old saying is, when mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. There ain't nobody happy in that household. And the boys from Leah, they know their dad doesn't love their mom like he does Joseph and Joseph's mom. Man, I mean to tell you, you got the most explosive situation you can imagine. But now as we look to the jealousy part here, we're going to begin to look at what fueled the jealousy, if that wasn't enough. Genesis 37, we pick it up, I think, verse 2. He, Joseph, was always telling his father all sorts of bad things about his brothers. Now, that's the way to win your brothers over, isn't it? Yeah. How many of you like for your sibling to be a tattletale on you? I mean, don't your love for them just grow and grow and say, oh, they're the sweetest person? No. All right, Genesis 37:3, the next verse says, now this more fuel on the fire. Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other children because Joseph had been born to him in his old age. So one day Jacob had made a special gift made for Joseph, a beautiful robe. Now we know that. We learned that story when we were in vacation Bible school and Sunday school, you know, the coat of many colors. And I'm sure, guess what? It was a coat, actually, for royalty. And I got feeling Joseph wore it everywhere he went. And every time he wore it, and every time the brothers saw it, they hated him for it. They couldn't stand it. So the father isn't doing a great job here. Irma Bombeck said one time, I quote, it's a wise parent who knows you can't treat children all alike, but you can love them equally. I love the story of the 2nd grade girl that came to her teacher on the first day of school, and she said, my sister and I are going to be in your class. We're the same age, but we're not twins. One of us is adopted, but we can never remember which one. Boy, that's some good parenting. And Jacob obviously knew nothing about that, and he just fueled that jealousy. Now let's read verses 5-7 of Genesis 37. One night Joseph had a dream, and when he told his brothers about it, they hated him more than ever. Joseph, why don't you keep your mouth shut? You know, it's going to get you in trouble. He says, we were out in the field tying up bundles of grain. Suddenly my bundle stood up and your bundles all gathered around and bowed low before mine. Sure, they said, well, you think we're going to bow down to you? Well, it was the truth. But Joseph would have done well to have just kept it to himself. Now, let me ask you at this point, how many of you are feeling better about the family you grew up in? I'm glad I wasn't Joseph. I'm glad that wasn't my family life growing up. But you know what? In the New Testament, the church is compared to that as a family. We are all part of God's family, and we're all brothers and sisters in Christ. But guess what? We're dysfunctional. You know why? Because all of us are imperfect to one degree or another. There are times we just don't function the way we should, and we produce a lot of hurt, and we do a lot of thoughtless things. It wasn't 2 weeks ago. I was in the office one morning, went to lunch, and Tom was off that day, and Diane was going to be in the afternoon. And she knew I was in all day. I said, I'll go to lunch. She said, I'll be here probably when you come back before 12:30. So I come back at 12:30. I see her car. I think nothing of it. I pull up. I get out of the car, walk in through the kitchen door. When I do, the doorbell, of course, rings. She's in her office. She can't see me. I just walk along the wall, go into my office. I have my drink I'm going to put on my desk, and then I'm going to go into the office, check in with her. But she goes, hello. I don't know why. I just didn't answer. And she goes, hello, who's there? Well, this time, I still didn't answer. I just kept walking to my office. And time I'm getting to my door, of course, she can't see, even the window doesn't show where I'm at. I hear that chair banging around, I hear her clanging around in there, and I hear the door shut, and I hear it being locked. I thought, now I've done it. I scared her to death. She's going to have a stroke or a heart attack. So I quickly unlocked my door, put my drink on the desk, come in there, you know, and as I'm walking to come into her office, tell her it's me, I see that she accidentally, when she came into the office at lunchtime and unlocked the door, she left her keys in the lock. So I just unlocked it, and I opened the door, and I walk in, and I said, Diane, hi. I says, it works better if you don't leave the keys in the lock, you know. And I just started laughing, and she goes, Stephen Lee. You know, she always says that when she's upset with me, and I don't know why she's upset. But anyway, you know, I says, God just knew I needed a lot. I'm so sorry. I said, this was one of my weak moments. Why didn't you speak up? I don't know. I didn't feel like it. And I said, I talk to people all day long, and I didn't feel like talking right now. I said, I was coming in here after I went to my office, and she said, well, you scared me to death. I said, well, next time, remember, it works better if you don't leave the keys in the lock, you know. And so we've laughed about that, you know, since. But sometimes even preachers don't function the way they should. Sometimes they're thoughtless and they scare people, and I've had to repent of that and beg for her forgiveness, and she's more gracious than I am. She's forgiven me, but that happens in the family of God. There's going to be people that you think, why'd they do that to me? Well, I don't know. I have enough trouble trying to figure out why I do or don't do what I do or don't do. So we just got to cut each other, you know, a lot of slack. And realize that in the church, we're a family, and times we're not going to get along much better than sometimes the one you grew up with, and maybe you never fought with your brothers or your sisters. You know, I'm sure this is foreign concepts to you, but that's why God created families, and that's why He created the church, so that we can grow and mature and learn to do better than we've done in the past. So Joseph, he'd tell you it's a struggle if you have to grow up with a dysfunctional family. Secondly, here we go. It is possible, with God's help, to be a count-on-me person, even in a dysfunctional family. And so here we're going to talk about the application that everybody here has a story of pain. And you can use it as an excuse if you want. And you can go through the rest of your life using it as an excuse. And you can say, hey, don't count on me, because I've never been able to count on anybody. I'm just going to count on myself. And I'm looking out for number one, and everybody else can go jump. I really don't care. You can have that attitude because you've been hurt. Maybe in a dysfunctional family that you grew up in. Maybe a dysfunctional family that you're a part of today. Maybe because you've been hurt in the family of God. You say, well, let me tell you, I tried to be one of those count-on-me people in the church, and I got kicked in the teeth by somebody, and I got criticized, and I got put down. Don't count on me no more. You can use that as an excuse because you've been hurt in the past. I don't know how to illustrate it any better, but imagine if you're driving a car. Every time you drive your car, there's only one thing you do, is you try to go forward, but you just look at the rearview mirror at all times. What's going to happen? There's going to be a big accident. You talk about pain, there's going to be a lot of pain coming your way. And how do we think we can move forward for God? By nursing the hurts and the wounds and looking in the rearview mirror and paralyzing the present and canceling the future because of what has happened in the past. You just got to come to the point where you let go and say, you know what? I'm an imperfect person. I live in a world of imperfect people. My family's imperfect. My church is imperfect. You know what? That's just the way we are. But we're all in a growth process. I need people to cut me some slack when I've caused some pain. I really didn't intend to, maybe even. But hope they'll cut me some slack. And I'm going to cut others some slack. And instead, I'm going to do the opposite. Instead of the jealousy and the competing, I'm going to be an encourager. The Bible says, rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Which is harder of the two to do, do you think? Which is harder? Weep with those who weep, or rejoice with those who rejoice? I know. It's a lot harder to rejoice with those who rejoice. When somebody's hurting in that, it's easy to go to them and say, oh, I feel so bad, let me pray for you. I feel awful. But when you're hurting and the other person's just getting promoted and their life just seems to be a paradise for them, it's hard to say, way to go. Really happy for you. Even when it's unfair. That's who Joseph was. We're going to see this unfold in weeks to come. But encourage one another, the Bible says. It talks about the one another and the interaction we ought to have. And instead of what was going on in Joseph's household, we need to be encouraging one another. You know, I got some of the neatest things and comments and calls and texts and emails. As many of you know, no doings of our own, but they put an article in the paper about our pigs, you know, and Andy's picture and mine was there, and a lot of you very gracious. The best comment, and somebody made a wonderful, wonderful plaque. I'd like to know who it is. They didn't put a name on it. It was on my door when I came in last night, and well, thank you, whoever. Incredible, beautiful, beautiful frame and everything. But Melissa sent me a text, and here's what it said. I memorized it. She says, congratulations. She says, you know, you made the paper, you and your piggies. She says, great article, great picture, and great to know that it wasn't on the police beat or the obituary page. I thought that puts it pretty well, doesn't it? Anytime you stay off the police beat or the obituary page, we're doing pretty well, you know. But man, that's what God calls us to do, to encourage one another instead of compete and be jealous and nurse those hurts and look backwards. Well, we wrapped up with the third lesson, and here it is. This is, if you've tuned me out, tune in here, okay? Because it's not about Joseph. It's not about me. It's not about this church. It is about somebody you need to connect up with and make a commitment to. Number 3, it is a God that we have proven faithful time and again that we can count on, that motivates you and I to step up and become a count on me follower. How do you rise above the hurts of life? How do you rise above your past and dysfunctional families at home or in the church or wherever it may be? How do you do it? You do it by looking to God and realize that He's a God of faithfulness. He's been a God we can count on. He's consistent, even when we're inconsistent. And this should inspire and motivate you and I to step up and say, I'm going to be a count on me person like never before because I serve a count on me God. That's what it's all about. It's about God. Now, I'm going to throw out some scriptures to you, but before I do, let me set the stage. This passage and these chapters we've looked at they're not about Joseph. They're not about Jacob. They're not about Rachel. They're about a God who is the champion of the down and outer. And you and I, at some point or another, are going to feel cheated. We're going to feel ripped off. We're going to feel that life's been unfair. We're going to be hurt. And God is always going to be there. You can count on Him. Look what he does for Leah. Genesis 29:31. When the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, what did he say? Oh, that's just too bad. She'll have to deal with it. No. God enabled her to have children, but Rachel could not conceive. Who went to bat for Leah when it looked like nobody loved her? God, in a big way. But look what he did for Rachel. Genesis 30:22. Then God remembered Rachel's plight. Sure, she's a beauty queen, but she wants children more than anything, and answered her prayers by enabling her to have children in his time. And then look what he does for Joseph. Genesis 39:2. The Lord was with Joseph, so he succeeded in everything he did. What a God. What a God that comes to us in our time of need. We can count on him. Lamentations 3:20-23 says this, and we close. I will never forget this awful time. As I grieve over my loss, Jeremiah writes, yet I still dare to hope when I remember this. The faithful love of the Lord never ends. His mercies never cease. Great is his faithfulness. He's a count on me God. His mercies begin afresh each morning. All right, here's where we go as we wrap it up today and we get ready to, we call it invitation time. We're going to call it commitment time for the next several weeks. God is asking you. It's not me as a preacher trying to put a guilt trip on you. But if this church, the family of God, is going to function the way God created it, it's going to be demanding of you and I that we step up and be a count on me individual. You're going to see that those who are leading already, those who are teaching Sunday school, serving in some capacities, many of them I've been able to get a hold of today. Some of you I've missed. But you're going to be wearing your count on me badge. Why don't you put your name on it? We got more of them coming. They only sent a fraction of what they were supposed to send. As you go out today, look at that poster, all right, there on the wall before you as you walk out. Count on me. That's what God's asking of you. You've been counting on me, God says. Now can I count on you? You look at that fellowship hall. There's another big poster right there on the west wall. Count on me. We're going to encourage you as we reveal to you over the next several weeks needs that we have. We have a lot of needs for a lot of servants. We've got some people that are really stretched, and some of them are really burned out because they've been carrying the load in 2-3 areas, and they just need more workers. And we're going to do some information for you to know and understand what's asked of you. If you're like me, I don't volunteer for something if I don't know exactly what is entailed and what is expected of me. And so we're going to get more information than we ever have before. But ultimately, it's God speaking to your heart. And we're going to ask you to respond positively and pick up if you haven't gotten connected in some area of service. Pick up one of these and say, you can count on me. And we're going to have you sign different sheets that you'd be willing to serve in. We don't want you to sign them all. It's way too much for anybody. We got several serving in several areas. Just pray about it. We're not going to have you sign anything yet today. You begin to pray this week. Say, God, I want you to count on me. I don't even know where to go. And we're going to begin giving more information than you can imagine as to what the church here is doing, what our mission is looking like, and what is going to be required of us as a team, and for us to function the way God created it. It's his church, and he designed it to be one body. And so I'm going to encourage you to say more than ever before, I'm going to step up. And God, I'm going to be a count on me person for you. We do that as we stand and sing.